The night Blu Cantrell realized Jay-Z wasn't just powerful, he was dangerous. Wasn't some wild Hollywood blowout. No, it was quiet. Too quiet. One day she's everywhere. Grammy nods, chart-topping hits, major label backing. The next? Poof. Contract gone. Phone calls stop. Her own lawyer suddenly teams them. And who keeps popping up in the background? Jay-Z. Then Beyonce starts dropping videos that look a little too familiar, working with the same producers, and naming her kid Blue. Come on. Blue didn't trip. She connected the dots. This wasn't just bad luck or industry politics. It was a clean, calculated shutdown. And the wild part? Nobody yelled, nobody swung. They just closed the door and threw away the key. By the time Blue started speaking up, the system had already painted her as emotional and unstable. But if you were in her shoes, you'd be screaming too. And Blue, she still got the receipts. Blu Cantrell, before the spotlight. Before the headlines, before the rumors, before Beyonce and Jay-Z were even part of the equation, there was Blu Cantrell. And if the name doesn't hit right away, go play hit 'em up style and try not to sing along. Go ahead, we'll wait. Now that we're all in the same key, Blue wasn't some industry plant or a one-hit wonder who stumbled into fame. She was raised on jazz, trained her vocals in the church, and could sing. Like real deal, no auto-tune needed vocals. Born Tiffany Cobb in Providence, Rhode Island, Blue came from a musical family. Her mother was a jazz singer, and it shows. "I always wanted to be a performer," she once said. "It was the only thing I ever did, actually." She got her first real industry experience singing background for other artists, including Puff Daddy. Yes, that Puff Daddy. But back then, being a backup singer didn't pay the bills or guarantee fame. It just kept the dream alive. Still, Blue hustled. She landed a spot in an all-girl R&B group called 8th Avenue, and that's when the right people started paying attention. Teddy Riley. Yes, the same Teddy Riley who invented New Jack Swing and co-founded Blackstreet, took her under his wing. If you had Teddy's stamp of approval in the late 90s, you were golden. Or at least that's how it was supposed to go. Teddy ended up leaving Blackstreet, and when he did, the label pulled the plug on the group. Just like that, 8th Avenue was shelved. No debut album, no promo run, nothing. Blue's first real shot at stardom vanished overnight. And honestly, that should have been the end. That's the kind of industry heartbreak that makes most people walk away and go back to a 9-to-5. But Blue? She wasn't done. In 2000, she was just visiting Atlanta, minding her business, when a guy spotted her in a hotel lobby and told her she looked like a singer. "Funny you say that," she replied. "I am one." He invited her to Red Zone Studios, a known hit factory where producers like Tricky Stewart and The Dream would later cook up #1 records. Blue walked in, sang her face off, and just like that, the game changed. One listen was all it took. Major labels started circling like sharks. 5 of them, 5, were fighting to sign her. In the end, she chose Arista Records, led by the legendary L.A. Reid, who had just signed big acts like Pink and Avril Lavigne. Blue didn't just walk into a deal, she walked into a full-blown rollout. She went straight into the studio with the elite: Dallas Austin, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis. These were hitmakers who had worked with Janet Jackson, TLC, and Madonna. Blue was next in line. By the summer of 2001, her debut album So Blue dropped, and the timing couldn't have been better. R&B was dominating the charts, and Blue had something the others didn't: attitude. Hit 'em Up Style hit #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became the most played song on American radio in 2001. That's not speculation. That's a fact. The media loved her. Radio loved her. And for a moment, Blu Cantrell was that girl. Critics called her a fresh voice with classic vocals, and audiences agreed. She got a Grammy nomination and international success, especially in Europe, where fans couldn't get enough. The industry saw her as the next big thing. But here's the thing about being the next big thing in music. Someone already is the big thing. And when you start rising too fast, certain doors don't just close, they slam. Blue had no idea what was coming next, but at that moment, she had earned it. Every bit of it. Caught between Jay-Z, Diddy, and Beyonce. Before Blu Cantrell was topping charts and shaking up the R&B world, she was putting in serious work as a background vocalist. She wasn't just harmonizing in the corner, she was backing up real talent. We're talking Gerald Levert, Keith Sweat, and even Puff Daddy during his shiny suit days. Blu's voice was everywhere if you knew where to listen, and it didn't take long before some major eyes locked in on her. And by major, we mean Jay-Z and Diddy, aka the unofficial gatekeepers of early 2000s hip-hop royalty. Blu wasn't chasing attention, it came to her. And when she dropped So Blue in 2001, with that powerhouse single Hit 'em Up style lighting up the radio, people in the industry started watching her very closely. She had the talent, the look, the momentum. And that's when the whispers started. Word on the street was that Blu and Jay-Z had something going on behind the scenes. Now, in that era, Jay-Z was already running things. He was everywhere, running Rockefeller Records, dropping hits left and right, and quickly becoming one of the most powerful men in music. So when people started seeing him and Blu at the same events, or hearing rumors about late-night conversations and studio visits, eyebrows went up. Was it business? Was it something more? Blu kept things classy. She never spilled tea or stirred the pot. But she didn't exactly shut the rumors down either. She played it cool, until she called into the Wendy Williams show in 2003. And if you've ever heard Wendy interview anyone, you know she doesn't tiptoe around gossip. Wendy asked Blu point blank about the Jay-Z situation.
You look like a natural blonde.
That's because I have a very good colorist.
Did you fuck Jay-Z?
Oh my God!
Did she really have him locked down?
I think so. I think they're in love. No, I really do think they're in love. I have a big crush on him, though. I'll tell you that much.
Did you fuck
I
him?
still have a crush on him now.
Blu's response? Iconic. Oh my God, I really like him though. And I don't care. I don't care who he's dating. I always had a crush on him. That wasn't a confirmation, but it wasn't denial either, and fans ran with it. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know. Was Blu Cantrell dating Jay-Z? Did Beyonce know? Was there overlap? Because here's the plot twist. Later that exact same year, 2003, Jay-Z and Beyonce went public with their relationship. They dropped the Bonnie and Clyde 03 video, started hitting red carpets together, and suddenly, the Jay-Z rumors around Blu disappeared. Just like that, the timing, a little too smooth. Blu, meanwhile, was promoting her sophomore album Bittersweet and still doing press. But the energy had shifted. The press wasn't just asking about music, they were digging into the Jay-Z gossip, and Blu, staying professional, brushed most of it off. In interviews, she clarified that they only hung out once, and the press had blown it up. But fans weren't buying it. And behind the scenes, things got a little strange. People who had once worked with Blu were suddenly unavailable. Collaborations fizzled, calls stopped. It wasn't dramatic, it was surgical. One minute, she was everywhere. The next, it was like she had vanished. And who was soaring at the same time? Jay-Z and Beyonce, locking in their spot as music's power couple. To fans paying attention, it didn't feel like a coincidence. Blu wasn't part of some love triangle drama. She was caught in the crossfire of something bigger. One insider told The Guardian that year, she was in rooms with powerful men, but she didn't have protection. And in the music business, attention from the wrong power players can be a blessing or a curse. Blu didn't say much after that Wendy moment, but the message was clear. She had been close to something big, and it slipped through her fingers right when someone else stepped into the spotlight. And if you ask her fans, she didn't just fade away, she was pushed. Blu's style, Beyonce's spotlight. Let's get into one of the biggest turning points in the Blu Cantrell story. The moment she realized this might not just be competition, but something personal. Back in 2003, right when Jay-Z and Beyonce went public with their now iconic Bonnie and Clyde '03 video. Blu was already doing her own thing with a similar concept. She had just dropped visuals for her track Roundup, which also played with the whole ride or die outlaw couple vibe. But when she saw Jay and Bey's version, Blu didn't bite her tongue. She told the press point blank that Bonnie and Clyde video looked real familiar to what I just dropped. Now, she wasn't throwing a full-on tantrum about it, but she wasn't exactly clapping from the sidelines either. It felt like a pattern was starting to form, and it wasn't just about visuals. Enter Sean Paul. Blu's duet with Sean Paul, Breathe, was a massive hit. It topped the UK singles chart and became one of her biggest international smashes. The chemistry was undeniable, the energy was fresh, and fans were loving it. It was sleek, it was rhythmic, and it had that exact blend of R&B and dancehall that made it club and radio gold. And just when Blu was gaining global traction with Breathe, Beyonce came through with Baby Boy, also featuring Sean Paul. Now look, artists share collaborators all the time. It's not exactly illegal, but the timing and the vibe? Let's just say Blu had questions. Baby Boy had that same Caribbean bounce, that same dancehall edge, and the same man singing on it. And to Blu, it didn't feel like a coincidence. She told The Guardian, "Baby Boy has the exact word breathe in the hook. She's ripping me off, but there's no animosity. I'm just disappointed. Beyonce is talented. She didn't have to do that." That quote hit hard. Not because it was messy, but because it was honest. Blu didn't accuse Beyonce of stealing her entire sound, but she did call out what looked like a suspicious pattern. Visual similarities, shared collaborators, timing that always seemed to undercut her momentum. Blu had dropped Roundup, then came Bonnie and Clyde. She had Breathe, then came Baby Boy. It started to feel like every time Blu stepped forward, someone else, someone with a bigger machine behind them, was stepping right into her lane. Blu didn't scream sabotage. She didn't post a 10-part Instagram rant. She just called it what it felt like. Strategic moves that came at her expense. To the public, it may have looked like jealousy. But to Blu, it was disappointing. Because she wasn't some overnight act chasing fame, she had earned her spot. And instead of building with her, the same industry that once fought to sign her seemed to be using her as a blueprint for someone else. And when the other artist is Beyonce, there's no room for error. You don't get to compete. You either get absorbed or erased. Blu Cantrell didn't need to spell it out. Fans were already connecting the dots. Beyonce's 2003 track signs had her whispering, "I was in love with a Sagittarius. I've been hurt by a Pisces." Jay-Z is a Sagittarius. Blu, a Pisces. It felt like a quiet confirmation that something did happen between Jay and Blu, and Bey knew. Blu's response? Straight to the point. She told The Guardian, "If Beyonce has a problem with her man, she should deal with him. Don't take it out on me." Period. But the moment that really had fans doing double takes? When Beyonce and Jay-Z named their daughter Blue Ivy. Blu Cantrell may have vanished from the spotlight, but the name Blu was suddenly everywhere again, just spelled slightly differently. Blu tweeted a vague "congrats," but her fans weren't fooled. One said, "Blu was first and could sing." This ain't a coincidence. To Blu, it felt like one final message. They won. She didn't just lose momentum. She got erased, and then replaced, right down to the name. Whether intentional or not, Beyonce's lyrics and choices seem to shadow Blu's story. And Blu? She's kept the receipts and stayed watching. Asking help from Diddy. Just when Blu Cantrell was leveling up, Grammy nominations, chart-topping singles, global fame, an old fear came back to haunt her. Before the hit records and magazine covers, she'd posed for some nude photos. She was young, broke, and just trying to survive. This was before the glitz, before the record deal, before anyone knew her name. At the time, it was just a way to keep the lights on. But now that she was famous, those photos felt like a ticking time bomb. Naturally, she panicked. And who do you go to when you're a rising star, scared your past might ruin your future? Someone powerful, someone connected, someone like Sean Diddy Combs. Blu told this story in an interview back in 2003. She said she went to Diddy, someone she assumed would understand the pressure of the spotlight and maybe even help protect her. Instead, she got this response. "I've seen you with no clothes and you looked cute, babe." Not exactly the comfort she was looking for. That moment stuck with Blu, not just because it was wildly inappropriate, but because it confirmed what she was starting to feel all around her. She wasn't being seen as a serious artist anymore. She was being treated like a prop, a voice, yes, but also an image, a body, a tool. And the thing is, Diddy wasn't just a passing figure in her story. His name kept popping up, sometimes in professional contexts, other times in whispers and rumors. There was buzz that Blu and Diddy had dated, but neither of them ever confirmed it publicly. Still, the way they talked about each other, the familiarity, the tone, it raised eyebrows. Fans noticed. Industry folks definitely noticed. The power dynamic was clear. Blu was rising fast, but she didn't have the kind of leverage Diddy or Jay-Z had. And when she started confiding in them, it felt less like mentorship and more like grooming. At least that's how Blu would describe it years later. By the time 2024 rolled around, Blu was no longer sugarcoating what happened. She said the reason her career didn't reach the heights it should have wasn't just labeled drama or bad luck, it was exploitation. She claimed that Jay-Z positioned her to be used, and Diddy was the one who benefited. According to Blu, she was pressured, trapped, and eventually discarded. This wasn't about beef. It wasn't even about fame anymore. It was about a system that saw a young, talented black woman as something to manage and manipulate, not support. And let's be real, that photo shoot incident with Diddy, that was a red flag waving in high definition. It showed her that even the people who smiled in your face, who called you babe and promised you an opportunity, weren't necessarily on your side. They were watching. They were waiting. And in Blu's case, she says they were pulling strings from behind the scenes. It's not like she could go public and accuse Diddy of anything serious back then. She didn't have receipts, just instincts. And instincts don't hold up in court. But that offhanded "you looked cute" comment? It was enough to tell her everything she needed to know. And years later, when she started connecting the dots, her contract vanishing, her collaborators disappearing, her voice suddenly erased from the radio, it all started making sense. She wasn't crazy. She was calculated out. And when she tried to speak up, the silence was deafening. Blu was never just a one-hit wonder. She was a rising threat, and some very powerful people knew it. Blu Cantrell erased. By 2024, Blu Cantrell wasn't interested in sugarcoating anything. After years of quiet, she finally confirmed what fans had suspected all along. Her career didn't just fizzle, it was sabotaged. And not by some random label exec or shady manager, but by two of the most powerful men in music, Jay-Z and Diddy. Blu didn't come forward with a tell-all memoir or a viral YouTube rant. She did what she always does. Kept it calm, cool, and real. She said it plainly. Jay-Z positioned her to be used, and Diddy was the one who benefited from it. She wasn't talking metaphors or industry cliches. She meant it literally. Her quote, that they didn't guide or support her, they traded her. And the way she described those early interactions? Weird. Not in the quirky, harmless kind of way. Weird as in, why does this feel like a setup? Kind of way. Blu said from the moment she started gaining traction, she felt something was off. There were meetings that didn't make sense, conversations that made her uncomfortable, and people in the room who made her feel like a product, not a person. At the time, Blu was still young and navigating an industry that had no HR department and even fewer boundaries. She was surrounded by powerful men who could make or break careers with one phone call. And it didn't take long for her to realize that she wasn't in control of her own narrative. So what did Blue do when things got weird? She did what anyone would do. She asked questions. Where was the budget for her next project? Why had her team gone silent? Why were the producers who once praised her voice suddenly unavailable? And that's when the rug got pulled. Blue found out that her label, Arista Records, had simply not renewed her contract. To make it worse, Blue later discovered that the lawyer who was supposed to be representing her interests was also working for the label. Conflict of interest? Absolutely. But in this game, it's called Tuesday. Her words were clear. They were all working together to basically take what was mine. Now, anyone who's ever tried to read a music contract knows it's like deciphering ancient scrolls. But what Blue figured out was pretty simple. She had been boxed out. Strategically, quietly, and very deliberately. 1 minute she's riding high on international charts. The next, no budget, no rollout, no royalties. And just like that, Blu Cantrell, who once had 5 major labels fighting over her, was gone from the spotlight. And while her name disappeared from playlists and press, the people who'd once surrounded her were doing better than ever. Jay-Z was expanding his empire, Beyonce was collecting Grammys like infinity stones, and Diddy was still Diddy, loud, rich, and on every red carpet. But Blue, she was nowhere. Which, honestly, is what made it all feel so eerie. Careers don't just vanish. There's usually a story, a scandal, a viral moment. But with Blue, it was like someone had hit delete. And that's exactly what she's saying happened. She didn't burn out. She was pushed out. And once she started pushing back, asking where her money went, why her lawyers flipped sides, and who made the call to let her contract lapse, that's when the silence started. Not because she wasn't talented, but because she'd become inconvenient. One queen at a time. It was the mid-2000s. Beyonce was on the rise. And not just casually rising. We're talking rocket ship to superstardom levels. The Destiny's Child frontwoman had gone solo, and every release felt like an event. Grammys? Check. Pepsi deals? Check. A-list everything? Absolutely. But behind the perfect branding and powerhouse vocals, Blu Cantrell was watching, and not impressed. Because while the world was busy crowning Bey the new queen of pop and R&B, Blue believed she was being quietly pushed out of the way to make room. Now let's be clear. Blue never accused Beyonce of dragging her out by the wig. What she did say, however, was that her career's sudden disappearance didn't feel like bad luck or coincidence. It felt strategic. And at the center of it, Beyonce and Jay-Z. Blue openly believes Beyonce blackballed her, saying the industry shut its doors not because her music flopped, but because it was inconvenient. There wasn't enough room for 2 powerful, black genre-blending R&B divas at the top, and Blue says they chose Beyonce. She told The Guardian, "There's no animosity. I'm just disappointed. Beyonce is talented. She didn't have to do that. Translation, I see you, and I see what you did." From shared collaborators like Sean Paul, to eerily similar visuals, Bonnie and Clyde, anyone, to the now infamous naming of Blue Ivy, Blue felt the signs were all there. And while others saw those moments as pop culture fun facts, Blue saw them as reminders of a career she believed was deliberately dismantled. And the folks behind it. She wasn't shy. Jay-Z and Beyonce. They weren't just the face of the industry. They were the gatekeepers. And once Blue started calling out the similarities, pointing to the weird coincidences and asking uncomfortable questions, well, the silence got loud. Her contract, gone, her label, quiet, her phone, not ringing. Meanwhile, Bey's trajectory was flawless. It wasn't just that Beyonce was succeeding. It was that Blue was being erased while it happened. Was it a coincidence? Maybe. But according to Blue, not a chance. She wasn't just edged out. She was deliberately removed. And the industry didn't use drama or beef to do it. They used silence. Cold, calculated silence. And when Blue finally spoke out, the industry did what it always does when someone questions the machine. It shut her out even more. Blue screaming for help. In 2014, Blu Cantrell had been out of the spotlight for years. No tours, no album rollouts, no press. But when her name did resurface, it wasn't on a music chart. It was in a TMZ headline. That summer, around 2 a.m. in Santa Monica, Blu was seen running barefoot through the streets, waving her arms and yelling that someone was trying to poison her with gas. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic and disturbing. She was panicked, paranoid, and clearly not okay. The police detained her for a psychological evaluation, but she wasn't arrested. No charges. Just a terrifying moment caught by paparazzi, and a few blurry photos that sparked more whispers than sympathy. The public called it a breakdown. The media laughed. But Blu had warned people about this before. Years earlier, she'd hinted in interviews that something wasn't right behind the scenes. She spoke about being manipulated, pressured, blackballed, and left with no support system. She said people were trying to erase her, and now here she was, running through the streets, screaming about being targeted. To her, it wasn't a meltdown, it was proof, and she wasn't alone in saying so. Jaguar Wright, another artist with deep ties to the same circle, had been saying for years that the industry doesn't just push people out, it tries to break them. She name-dropped Jay-Z, alleging he worked to silence certain artists. She also mentioned Eric Sermon, who allegedly jumped out of a window in 2001 around the same time Jay-Z was dropping a new album. That incident was never fully explained, just brushed off. Jaguar called it a pattern. So when Blu said, "They're trying to kill me," it didn't sound impossible. It sounded like a warning that had finally boiled over. The weirdest part? Just a few years earlier, Blu had tried to stage a comeback. In 2008, she appeared on NBC's Celebrity Circus, a show where washed-up stars tried to reclaim a little relevance by doing circus stunts on national TV. If you blinked, you missed her. She was eliminated in week 2. Barely any screen time, barely any buzz. It was supposed to be a lighthearted reboot, but for Blu, it was just another reminder that the industry had moved on without her. Her fame, gone, her money, dried up. The people she thought were allies, thriving. And all she was left with were her memories, a few cryptic interviews, and the belief that her downfall wasn't random. It was planned. So when Blu took off barefoot that night in California, yelling that someone was poisoning her with gas, it wasn't just a wild scene. It was a woman unraveling under the weight of years of silence. And whether the world believed her or not, Blu had already told her truth. Do you think Blu's been holding on to the full story all this time, just waiting for the right moment to drop the receipts? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to check out these next videos just for you. Catch you in the next one.